Hello, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This video is called The Concept of God in Christianity and Islam. There are many similarities with regards to the concept of God in Christianity and Islam. Both Christians and Muslims agree that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, eternal, loving, merciful, and gracious, etc. However, one of the points where we disagree is with regards to God's attribute of transcendence. In Islam, one of God's names is the Transcendent, Al-Ali in the Arabic language. This reveals His attribute of transcendence. What do we mean by transcendence? Transcendence means that God is, in His essence, above and beyond all things created. He is never contained inside His creation, and He is independent of it. Therefore, Muslims can never accept the belief that God came into this world in His essence and incarnated as a human being. Muslims believe that God is above His throne, which is above all creation. The Quran says, and I quote, يَخَافُونَ رَبَّهُمْ مِنْ فَوْقِهِمْ, which means those who fear or revere their Lord who is above them. Quran chapter 16 verse 50. The Quran also says, and I quote, الرحمن على العرش استوى, which means the most merciful has settled above His throne. Quran chapter 20 verse 5. Actually, the word on or above here means beyond. His being beyond or above is not like how a human being is above something. God or Allah's attributes, or God's attribute of transcendence, does not negatively affect His knowledge of all things at all times. So this leads me to what Christianity teaches. Christianity does not believe in a transcendent God, because Christians teach that God incarnated as a human being in the form of Jesus. Paul said about Jesus, quote, "For in Him dwells the whole fullness of the deity bodily." Colossians chapter 2 verse 9. Christianity gives God an attribute called omnipresence, which means present everywhere at the same time, whether at a specific time in history or at all times. The word everywhere, of course, includes in His creation. The reason Christians give for this belief that God became a man is that God needed to become a man in order to show His grace to us and His love, etc. And they say, of course, God can do all things. But in the Islamic theology, God does not need to become a man to do this. He controls all creation, shows us His mercy and His grace and love, etc., while remaining transcendent. Muslims also believe that God can do anything. However, God does not do anything that does not befit His majesty. And becoming a man does not befit His majesty. To say God needed to do something is like saying God is limited. And limitations, of course, are attributes of creation, not of God. What Christianity has done is destroyed the faith in God's divine attribute of transcendence by giving Him a location at one time in history. He was allegedly located in the body of Jesus on earth in Palestine 2,000 years ago. This, of course, from an Islamic perspective, is a blasphemy. And location is another attribute of the creation. God transcends even location. Muslims do not give God a location. Furthermore, Muslims naturally find this Christian belief disturbing because to say God is omnipresent also implies that God is in filthy places. And we know, it's not right to say God is in feces or in the toilet, for example. So in summary, Islam teaches us that God is transcendent, the Most High, the Majestic, and infinite, while Christianity teaches that God is not transcendent, but is omnipresent, one who incarnated and took on finite human attributes. You can't have it both ways. Either your God is above and beyond all creation, or he is or was within it. Let me quote to you a statement made by Bilal Philips, or Dr. Bilal Philips, a very famous Muslim scholar in the English-speaking world. Quoting from his book called The Fundamentals of Tawheed, Islamic Monotheism, on page 129, he says, quote, "Logically speaking, it is obvious that in a case where two things exist, one of those things must either be a part of the other or dependent on it, like its attributes, or it must exist by itself, distinct from the other. Thus, when God created the world, either he created it inside himself or he created it outside of himself. The first possibility is unacceptable because it would mean that Allah, or God, the finite supreme being, has within himself finite attributes of deficiency and weakness. Therefore, he must have created the world outside of himself, as an entity distinct from himself yet depending on him. Having created the world outside of himself, he either created it above himself or below himself. Since human experience nowhere confirms prayer downwards, and being below creation contradicts God's majesty and supremacy, God must therefore be above his creation and distinct from it. As to the contradictory descriptive statements that God is neither connected to the world nor separate from it, or that he is neither in the world nor outside of it, such words are not only illogical, but they in fact deny God's actual existence. Such claims relegate God to the surrealistic realm of human thought, where opposites can coexist and impossible things exist, such as the Trinity, three gods in one. So I ask you, what concept of God is more respectful, elevated, and majestic, Islam's or Christianity's? I believe the Islamic concept is the more pure one, and I believe that it's the same concept held by all the prophets of God. I'll let you decide that. Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum.